Anyways, are we up and going, Chrissy? Okay. Hi,
Yes.
everybody. Welcome. Hold on, let me see where I can see you. Oh my gosh, there you all are. I hit the right button. Now I see all your faces. Yay! Yay! So fun. Welcome. I'm happy to see you. I don't know how you're all like getting to do this in the middle of your day, but I don't care and you shouldn't care. Just whoever you had to make out with so you could sit here for 45 minutes with me on a Zoom call, it's going to be worth it. Okay. That is all I am saying. Welcome everybody to the Fierce Happy Hour. Did anybody bring a snack or a drink? Oh, nice. Oh, well done. Oh, good job, everybody. I see a Topo Chico. This is yet another drink vehicle in which my initials or name is on them. That's just Southern. Raise your hand if you're Southern on this call. Okay. Do you know about what I'm saying about the naming, the putting of the names on the things? I'm scrolling through all the pages so I can see you. I mean, honestly, I would pay you $1 million if you can find a 4-year-old Southern girl whose initials are not embroidered on her smockery or whatever the heck. That's just how it is. It's a geographical value. Okay, I'm so happy to see you. Everybody joining, let me tell you a little bit about, because some of you are like, I see some Zooms, and yet I'm not on a Zoom. So as it turns out, we were gonna be on Zoom last week, which allowed, if you can imagine this, up to 10,000 people on one Zoom. And then they were like, Jen, you can do that, and all you have to do is pay $10,000 per Zoom. And we were like, that feels expensive. And so we had to pivot last week to a video, but now we're figuring it out. So for everybody who's not on a Zoom, and it's like, why aren't I not on a Zoom? These girls, I would like to introduce you to them. These are OG members of the Jen Hatmaker Book Club, meaning they signed up month 1 last June, and they have now completed their first year in the Jen Hatmaker Book Club. And it is a delightful community. I mean, look at these girls. Look at them. These could be your friends. These could be your sisters. I promise you some of these girls live by you. And so knowing we can only have a certain amount of Zoom people on the call, we reached out to our OG book club girls and said, hey, how about for our year anniversary, you join me for the Fierce Happy Hour? Thank you for saying yes, everybody. And really, again, I have no idea how you managed it. I bribe people. I mean, who bribed? Like bribery, threats, these are all good tools and tactics. So everybody, welcome to week number 2. What we're talking about this week is the second section of Fierce. If you are still reading it, or if you haven't read it yet, first of all, go get your copy. Hi. You'll remember that I wrote Fierce in 5 big sections. And these were the areas in which I noticed, not just in my life, but in our community, that women were largely not telling the truth, that there was something true or real or sincere on the inside, but we, for a million reasons, were having trouble allowing those things to live on the outside. We were pretending, and we are posing, and we are faking, and we are lying, and we are staying silent when we really want to say something, and we're just kind of patching it all together. And so last week we talked about section 1, which is who I am. And that's the right place to start. Because if we are going to live free, if we are going to live all the way into a life of freedom, exactly who we are, exactly how we were made, exactly how we thrive and flourish on this earth, then that's where we start. Who am I actually? And for some of us, that is some heavy lifting. We don't even know. It's been so long since we accessed her, that real her, we had to do some serious excavation to even find her. So depending on where you are in your life, that's some really heavy work. But this week, we move on to section 2, which I'm so excited about because this section is what I need. Okay, what I need. And I put this second because I don't know if I ever told you guys this, but when I sat down to develop the content for Fierce, I combed through about probably upwards of around 2 years of our social media communication on my pages. What you said, what I said, what you said to what I said, what our conversations were. And I was looking for where are our shared pain points? What is it inside of our community that we keep going, me too, me too, me too, that's me, same story here. And I began taking notes of everything that I heard from you. And one thing that I heard over and over and over is that there are some real sincere things that we need, but we are afraid to say those things out loud. We are afraid to ask for them. We don't think we deserve them in the first place. It feels to us like we're admitting weakness. We don't think anybody wants to help us, or that we're not deserving of their time. It kind of goes on and on and on. And that includes the last section, which we'll get to, which is I need more connection. And what I noticed is that chapter 6, I need more connection, that was like pressing on a bruise. I don't know how many of you felt that way when you read that chapter, but that is a very shared need in our community. We are hungry for more connection, and a lot of us are lonely. Okay, so we're going to get to that. So we have 2 pretty big ideas to unravel and possibly even reimagine this week as we work our way through section 2. And here's the 2 like big ideas that for some of us just feel like, yeah, obviously I know that. And for some of us, this is so revelatory. It's so monumental to reimagine that it feels impossible. And the ideas are this, that you deserve goodness. Just, that's it. There's no but. Just you deserve goodness. And the second one is that you have needs that deserve attention. And that includes community. Okay, so this is the thesis. That's the thesis of this section that I want to talk about. So it's the first one I want to talk about most. This idea. By the way, we're going to get to your questions. I'm sure Team Jen, Chrissy over here with Team Jen has probably told you this, but if you have questions as we go, whichever platform you are watching this on, put your questions in the chat. What do you call it? Chat thread. Does that feel right? In the chat thread. Also, that's a great place for you to talk to each other. Last week, your communication to each other on the chat thread was so precious that I emailed Chrissy and Amanda here that are moderating for us and said, please send me all of that. I don't know where to find them. They went away. Internet is hard. And so they downloaded every single of your comments and I read them like a novel. So anyway, you're fantastic. Like I already knew. And so use that place to communicate with each other and with me. We're looking for your questions and we're going to devote a big chunk of this happy hour today to your questions. Okay, but here's what I want to talk about first. I want to talk about this idea that you deserve goodness. Now, look, I know that we have all come to this moment, to this conversation from different places. Some of us come from a pretty like hardcore faith background. That was like your childhood, and that's how some not at all, some somewhere in between. And so the way that we understand this idea is going to vary wildly based on what our childhoods look like. So here's how it worked for me. And of course, you know me at this point. You know, I came up through some pretty traditional, conventional faith channels. That was sort of what I knew. That was just all I'd ever seen or heard. That was everybody in my life. That was the only theology I ever heard. And so what I heard growing up, and I want to be really fair, that some of this was overt and some of it was what I just heard. I kind of picked it up out of the atmosphere. And so I don't quite, you know, I'm not, I want to be fair to how it was that I grew up, but I learned both overtly and subtly growing up that you and I absolutely did not deserve goodness. That was a pretty clear message to me. And the way that came packaged was up through like the faith space, which was, we are very inherently bad. We are very inherently bad, and therefore we cannot and should not trust our own belovedness or our own hearts. I don't know how many of you, let me just look at you. I'm gonna look at you. Just if you kind of came up through something of a conventional space that said, your heart is bad above all things, it cannot be trusted, it is wicked, and there's really nothing good in you, and God is probably cannot stand you, but we're going to find a workaround. Okay. Like, raise your hand if that was a little bit of a message you heard. I just kind of want to see who shared that sort of, okay. I see. So for those of you who aren't, you're like, wow, that is super weird. This was the theology I grew up with. And that I believed. Like, I 100% believed that I was deeply bad, like at my core. A bad heart, not to be trusted, bad mind, bad thoughts, certainly bad motives. That even when I did something sincere, even when I did something good, I probably ought to really check it twice, because I bet my motives were bad, right? Like, are you doing that for attention? Like, are you doing that for applause? I mean, I didn't feel like I could do anything without this looming shame over virtually everything I said or did. So, and then there's this argument that I heard to prop it up, like, well, you know what? You can't look at a 2-year-old and tell me that people are not wicked. I'm like, well, it's a baby. They're just like walking around in a diaper. My gosh, like, that's harsh to a 2-year-old. Here's the problem. Guys, I am not joking. This has taken the work of my adult life to unravel. I am still unraveling it, if I'm going to be honest with you. And it is this. When you and I believe that we are deeply, deeply bad, how on earth are we also supposed to believe that we are deeply, deeply loved, or that we are deeply, deeply worthy? How on earth are we to be expected to make that mental leap? And I realized for me, that was a large portion of why I grew up so afraid of God and feeling very disconnected from God. I could hook into Jesus. Jesus made more sense to me. Jesus was a person, and I could hear words that came out of his mouth, that he made more sense to me. But God, who basically couldn't stand the sight of me, and so I was always trying to please him or appease him or get on that guy's good side or finally stay on it, whatever the thing is, because I just didn't believe that I was loved. I believed I was tolerated, right? And that there was just some sort of heavenly, divine math that meant that God had to love me because of Jesus. But there's definitely nothing lovable about me, right? I don't believe any of that anymore, you guys. I find that position incredibly abusive and harmful and damaging to our past. I want to tell you that might not be your story. Like, maybe you did not grow up in a faith space, but a lot of us got the message early on that we did not deserve goodness. So maybe you got that from your parents. You could have gotten that from another really important adult in your life. You guys, this very week, I was talking to my son, Caleb. If you remember, Caleb is my third kid, and he just graduated from high school. And we were having a discussion about his future. And with absolute perfect clarity, he recounted to me 2 things he heard. One from his 5th grade teacher, and one from one of his teachers his freshman year. And verbatim, he said back to me what those 2 teachers told him that made a searing impression on his unworthiness. They essentially said to him, "You're unworthy," and not in so many words. We don't forget that stuff, right? And so some of you are here and you are like, this one moment is when a trusted person or an adult person, or maybe just my environment communicated to me, you don't deserve goodness, right? Those of you who are abuse survivors, you 100% got that message. If you are exploited or harmed in any way like that, that you downloaded that message that you don't deserve safety, you don't deserve love, you don't deserve to be protected, you don't deserve to be believed, maybe, and thus you don't deserve goodness. Here's my concern. That message, when it got internalized so early for so many of us, through whatever channel it came, is so incredibly damaging that it is literally imperative that you and I do the work to dismantle that lie and to reconstruct it in a way that is healthy and good and true. Because what ends up happening is we accidentally build an entire life on essentially self-hatred. We wouldn't call it that. That feels really harsh. That feels like extreme language, maybe, or that's just being melodramatic. But that is what it is. If something inside of you says, I don't deserve goodness, that is self-hatred. And then it begins to affect the way that we relate to the people we're married to. It affects the way that we parent. It affects our capacity to forgive and ask forgiveness. It affects our capacity for growth and health, because we end up manifesting that kind of self-hatred, right, into our relationships, into our faith. I mean, I don't even want to talk about this, but there's this horrible article that I read yesterday. It's just horrible. And I don't even want to say it. And I don't even want to draw attention to it because it's so toxic and poisonous. But there's this article that came out yesterday, and it's written from the perspective of a very rigid faith community, known for its absolute wooden, rigid doctrines. And so I don't even want to send eyeballs to it, but it was this article talking about the gifts of COVID. And it was saying, you know, we're in a very conservative church, we're positioned in a very progressive community, and inside that community, our neighbors don't like us essentially because of our anti-gay policies. And so we struggle to get any traction with our neighborhood because essentially we don't have an affirming space for the LGBTQ community. And so thus we're unwelcome in the neighborhood because we don't actually love our neighbors. They didn't say that. That's my commentary. Okay, that's just a Jen ad. But inside that article, I wrote it down. The author wrote about their desire to finally connect with the neighbors that they had polarized. And the author wrote, God answered our prayers by sending COVID-19, because now that the neighbors were food insecure, they were opening their homes for the first time to members of this church who could now deliver food. And so, like, WTF, right? Even worse, like this article went on to say, as it again explored the gifts of COVID. I mean, honestly, like, too bad about 350 people who don't live anymore and all their families. But as the article said, would we consider that an amazing advantage is that because of social distancing, this will be the first year in a couple of decades that there will be no pride parades? And a gift of COVID. So I guess all the other canceled events are just a tragedy. The people that couldn't go to their loved ones' funerals and all the graduations, but the pride parades, now that is cause for celebration. Like, I just can't. I just cannot. And this is something that was written inside the article that made me think about you today as we talk about I deserve goodness. The author wrote, COVID-19 breaks down the false confidence of man and makes us feel unsafe in our own strength, and feeling unsafe is sensible. As John Calvin writes in his commentary on Hosea 1:5, there is no reason why we should feel safe when God declares himself opposed to and angry with us. What is this? What is this terrible theology with this horrible God that hates your guts, right? That would stand idly by while 350,000 people perish and their families mourn just so he could cancel a pride parade. What is happening? Like, this is what I am talking about. This is the air that so many of us have breathed that says, you are gross. God himself is opposed to you. How in the world are we ever supposed to receive one shred of love inside that paradigm? How are we ever supposed to be healthy, grown people who can also give love freely if that is what we believe? It's just so terrible. It's so terrible. And I say no to it. And what I want you to hear me say is I don't believe that. And I don't believe that's true at all. And I don't believe that is how God operates in this world. And I believe that you are deeply loved. I believe you are crazy loved and only loved. And I don't think there is a shred of violence in God. It's not how he operates with the people that he loves. This is crazy. Don't believe it. Don't listen to it and don't buy it. Okay? No matter who told you, whether it was your pastor, your church, your mom, your dad, your teacher, I don't care who told you that you were not worthy of goodness. They are lying. They are lying. This is yours to claim. Nobody can take this away from you. It is yours, and you do deserve goodness, okay? You do, and you do deserve to build a life on that truth. Or what ends up happening is a million catastrophic effects. Well, we reject boundaries, important boundaries that our relationships are in need of because we find ourselves unworthy of them, right? We allow all kinds of harm and dysfunction into our relationships because somehow we will believe, well, we deserve that. Maybe worse, we end up passing that on to our kids. We do, because if we sincerely believe, if I believe that I don't deserve goodness, then how can I believe you do? How can I believe my kids do? How can I believe anybody does? Right? I will accidentally pass on my own self-hatred until other people can adopt it as their own, right? I don't want to do that. I am not doing that. So let's get this square. You deserve goodness, and then you deserve everything that comes with it. Now, this is probably going to require a lot of work for a lot of you because you have been told the opposite for so very long, which you believed, which you then internalized, which then you built a life on. So this is not small. I mean, we are pulling up a root from the bottom, and it is hard work, and it will not come easily. But I am insisting that you do the work. I'm insisting that you get this straight. Guys, if this is a place where you decide to do a lot of your own personal work, I cannot think of a better investment, not just in you, but in everybody that you love. That will be an investment in your marriages. That will be an investment in your families and into your children. That will be an investment into your careers and the work of your hands. It will 100% be an investment into your faith communities, into your neighborhoods, into your communities. This one has a big payoff, a very big payoff. And you're not the only one that receives the dividends, but you're the first one. And so that whole section is going to walk you through bit by bit. And I hope you downloaded your workbook today, because also that is a great tool. So if this feels so far away from you that you can't even think about where to start, the workbook will help you start. It will help you wrangle your thoughts into a focused place and start listing places where you have believed this poorly, and then places where you can reimagine it anew. All right. So use that as a tool. Use it with your friends. I think this work belongs in conversation with one another. Obviously it's yours, it's internal, but inside a safe community of other women who are doing the same lifting at the same time, powerful. So, so, so powerful. And we can start that here, but I would love to see you take that into your real lives, into your real friend groups, into with your sisters, with your daughters. Like, how awesome for us to imagine that our girls are not going to have to do this work when they're 45. They're going to be like, what are you even talking about? Like, of course I deserve goodness, you maniac. Don't be weird, you know? Like, yay, we could write a different story for the next generation. And I'm so determined to do it. Okay, I deserve goodness. Guys, do not go read that article. I'm not even kidding. I will never speak to you again. We are not going to give it clicks. Okay. The fun thing about right now is that I'm going to take some of your questions and I'm going to hear your actual voice. I'm going to switch right now to a different view. So, Chrissy, are you ready to give me a person in the Zoom that's going to ask me a question?
I am so ready. We have a question from Lisa. So
Yay, Lisa.
Unmuted you so you can ask your question.
Yay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yay, hey Jen. My question comes from chapter 4. There was a line in there that says, I deserve goodness and so does everyone else. So the question is, can you unpack the difference between someone who understands they deserve goodness as opposed to someone who feels entitled to all good things? How do you love, support, guide someone who takes that maybe the opposite way of what we're talking about?
Yeah, totally. Because there is a difference. Because life is hard. So I deserve goodness does not mean I never, ever expect to experience struggle or stress or harm, or that everybody else should bend over backwards to create a life of goodness for me. So there is clearly a difference. This one goes to the core. This is way down deep in the core of who we are, which is to say, let's take it to the negative first. I don't deserve harm, mistreatment, abuse, exploitation. I don't deserve to be gaslit, to be marginalized, to be disenfranchised. These sorts of social harms, nobody deserves. Nobody does. And so what we are saying is, because I believe this, literally created in God's image, which is pretty precious. Like, what a nice thing to say about humans. Like, hey, let's make humans up and let's make them in our image. Well, that we started at the top. You know what I'm saying? What a beautiful thing to say and believe and know. And so this is how sometimes I can get this right, as opposed to this idea of everybody give me what I want. That's not it. I think of it like this, especially for the woman who really, really struggles to believe in her own deserving nature. Think about it as like you as a 2-year-old, as a 3-year-old, as a 4-year-old. Think of yourself as a curious 6-year-old, 7-year-old, a 9-year-old coming into herself. Did she deserve goodness? It's easier when we think of ourselves as little girls. It's easier when we think of ourselves sort of through the lens of innocence, because the thing is, we grow up, we make mistakes, we fail, and then we attach all that failure to our deservedness. Well, I've done this, this, and this. You don't know what I've done. I don't deserve goodness. That's not true. Failures, mistakes, these do not cancel out our deservedness. That's not how life works. And so sometimes it's helpful to think of it like that. And so for somebody who is demanding that the world bend around her whims, that's just immaturity. That's not maturity. And so I think we can tell the difference, because women who believe they deserve goodness still suffer, they still struggle, but you can watch how they suffer. You can watch how they struggle. You watch what they internalize and what they don't, what they wear and what they don't, what they're willing to say, you know what, this is mine. I own this. This part was my fault. I take responsibility here. And what they're willing to say, oh, that's not mine. That's your work. You're putting on me, but that's yours. It's very, very bold when you see women who can exercise boundaries like that. But I really like the question, because what we don't want to raise is a bunch of spoiled people who believe the whole world is at their beck and call. That's going to be a tough, rude awakening. That's not ever going to be true. But we can walk around on this earth with a deeply internalized sense that we are loved and that we are good and we matter. That's what I'm aiming for. I very much like your background. I gave you an A+ rating on Rate My Rooms. Very nice. Well done. You got another one for me, Chrissy? Thank you. Thank you.
We have a question from Melissa Gilbreth, and I am currently looking for her so I can unmute her.
There's a bunch of them.
There she is. There she is. Okay.
Melissa, hop in here.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm on my daughter's computer because this is the perfect month for my computer to break.
Of course.
So my question comes from chapter 2 about the mega, meso, and modest. I wrote it down to make sure I didn't mess up my question, but that chapter was truly profound for me. And it literally explained the root of years of misunderstanding between me as a mega and my mom as a modest. Now that I understand it, how can I use that to develop a healthier relationship? And how does a mega maintain a balanced dynamic with a modest? Because there's been a lot of hurt there over the years.
Wow, what a great question. And I'm wondering if the root of the hurt is that, did your mom want you to be less, or did you want your mom to be more?
I mean, I think it was probably both. You know, me trying to fit in, I always felt like I had to be less, and that I was wrong for being more. And so in moments when I felt like it was safe to shine, I would try to draw everybody else into the light with me and try to drag them up on the too, and so they were completely uncomfortable. And so, for example, just this weekend, I got messaging. In fact, she actually used the word, "I think it would just be too much for you and the kids to be there." And kind of triggered me a little bit, like, I'm not too much. But how do I help her to know that I'm learning who I am as a mega and how that does impact others, while also respecting those boundaries, that I am okay just as I am, and then kind of overlooking those hurt things that have happened.
Okay. I caught about half of that. Your internet connection is in and out, but let me answer that to the best of my ability. I believe very much right now in the power of connection, even after decades of disconnection. And I think that's what you probably experienced, is that your mom did not understand you and found your volume alarming or overwhelming, and you felt probably suffocated by that and found your mom's volume too submissive, too subservient, too gentle. It's very hard to potentially understand that without a lot of concerted effort. And so I want to suggest that there is a real possibility in front of you to sit down with that chapter with your mom and say, here is what I am really interested in. I am interested in connection with you. I am not interested in being right. I'm not interested in finally proving my point. I think that maybe this might help you understand me more, and it's helping me understand you more. And I've noticed in my relational repair, if I can come to the table first and say, I think this is where I misunderstood you. And my guess is these are a few places I probably hurt you or freaked you out, or that you didn't understand me. And you start, I find that level of humility and sincerity incredibly contagious. So much is possible on the other side of that, even with your mom, who's been your mom your whole life, right? And there's a lot of layers. Like, you could probably go on and on and on for years telling me about all of it. And I'm not sure that that is so useful to go back and rehash. But if you could say, Mom, what I want is I want this second half of my life with you to be beautiful. And I want it to be meaningful. And I want you to be you inside of this relationship. And I want me to be me. And where neither one of us feels threatened by that, but we can really love each other exactly who they are. And so this is what I see in you. And this is what I hope you can see in me. I am telling you, if you have never had that conversation with her, there is possibility just embedded in that space. I really hope that you will find a moment to do that, to sit down with your mom in that sort of genuine place, and believe for the best, because you know that your mom loves you, and you know that what she wants is a vibrant relationship with you too. Of course she does. Of course she does. So if you go first, it might stun you. The possibility might stun you, what you could create new with your mom, even if you've never experienced it. Thank you for talking about that and for being so honest about such a tender space. Appreciate your question. Okay, Chrissy.
All right, we have a question from Rebecca Ruth. So Rebecca, raise your hand so I can see you in the sea. Keep waving it.
Mm-hmm.
Rebecca, are you waving at me?
Let
Rebecca.
me see if I can.
I am not seeing Rebecca, but that's okay because we have some backups. Oh, I see her now.
Oh, you found her. She's like, don't you skip me.
She's right there.
Don't you skip me. I was waving. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, Jen.
Hi.
Hi, everybody. So my question is about, I think that fierce is phenomenal, and especially for women, I think that's kind of the focus, understandably. But my daughter is 25, but then my boys are 22, 18, and 15. I have two seniors.
Yes.
And so as a boy mom, I struggle with explaining why the messages of fierce are important without explaining patriarchy. So then to explain that, I mean, they grew up in the church with, as I did, I'm still in the church, but I've only kind of changed things the last few years. So, they hear like the man hating kind of stuff. They hear all of those kind of messages, and it's almost like an instant turn off if I try to discuss this. It's like Taylor's song, If I Were the Man. I love that song, and yet they're like, oh, that's ridiculous. Like, I don't want my boys to be patriarchy filled, but I also don't know how to them.
Yeah. I've got a bunch of sons too, same ages. And this is a big conversation that we have to have with our sons and our daughters. It matters equally. And to some degree, some of the content in Fierce is universal. We want our sons to have voices too. We want our sons to have ownership of their own convictions too. We want them to live to their fullest capacity at whatever volume. And frankly, I can't remember if I said this last week, but I meant to. Our sons were also sold a terrible bill of goods. So it's not just the girls, although the girls had a very specific set of it. But our boys were also told, this is what it looks like to be a boy. This is what the popular boys sound like, act like. This is how they treat girls. This is what their bodies look like. Think about all the boys who were never going to fit that template. Never. They want to play trumpet, right? They are not going to be a lineman. And so some of these messages, I believe you could use as a front door. When you say, here are some of the things that boys were handed as little boys that were not fair. And these are the things that that boys have kept boys silent or sidelined or afraid or pushed them into these spaces that they were not comfortable. And none of that is fair. This is what this has looked like for girls. For girls, these were some of the rules packaged around their possibility. This is what it looked like in the church. And you can say it non-defensively, just simply in a great deal of the church, a woman would never even be allowed to lead. She couldn't even preach. She could be a brain surgeon, but she couldn't preach out of the book of Joshua, right? And so I think rather than just giving these big, high level ideas about patriarchy, I think a boy would be able to understand it a little bit more down to the ground in example. Let's talk about your sister. this is what this might look like. Like, here's a scenario. Here's how you would be able to walk through it. This is how she would have to walk through it. Very concrete examples, and gentle, not as if you are pointing a finger at them and saying, somehow we're already all mad at you, sons. And so good luck, like winning us back over. That makes them feel understandably defensive. I think what we have to do with our boys is develop not just a deep sense of empathy for girls who have been at the end of patriarchy and all kinds of abuse for that matter, but also a deep sense of equality. And so what we want to do is be talking about women and girls using the same powerful language that we talk about boys and men. We want to talk about them in leadership. We want to talk about their authority. We want to talk about their very special gifts. We want to talk about the wisdom that they are offering the world. We want to make sure that the various inputs that we have in our homes, what we're watching, what we're listening to, what we're reading, the art we have on our walls, the books we have on our shelves, communicate to both our sons and our daughters. Women are equal. Women matter. We are listening to women. We are learning from women. We are supporting women too. They'll pick that up. Some of this is very much caught more than taught, right? This is the air they breathe. Boys who grow up in homes that deeply value women, that's just what they know. That's how they know to behave. That's how they know to act. That's the language they learn from their parents and their siblings. And so the example that you set matters right now. Don't consider that a small thing. What you say, what you read, what you're listening to, what you're talking about, they are picking that up so much. And so some of that you'll be able to lead by modeling. And then they'll have to grow into it. They'll have to grow into it. And so I thank you that you're asking a question about the sons, because it's not going to do us a heap of good to produce a generation of empowered women if we didn't think to include the boys in the discussion, right? They're just going to have to do some of the same work we're doing now. And so thank you for raising good boys and good sons. That matters so much. It's a great question. All right, Chrissy.
All right, we've got a good question from Jessica Allen. Wave big. We are.
Hey, Jessica.
There's Waldo again. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Hi, thank you so
Hi, Jessica. Oh, look at your hat. Oh, you look so cute. Oh my God, I love it.
I love it so much. Everybody in my house is trying to take it and they can't have it. I love it so much.
I'm taking a picture of you. Oh, you look so cute with the red lip. Big fan.
Jen, I love the book. I'm loving the book club. And what I want to know is, as you moved from the life you knew as good and your life's work, as you moved from that into the goodness that you knew you deserved, what was the hope and the promise that you held on to? Because it is scary to leave what you know behind, because it means change, and knowing that what's ahead of you is better. It still feels really scary to walk away sometimes.
It does. You are not wrong, and you are not alone. And I hope that I did not soft sell that cost in Fierce or make it seem easy, or that there isn't loss built into it, because you're right. It's not easy. And there is loss built into some of that. Some things will die so that other things can live. And I have so much empathy for standing on the edge of that cliff and being like, there's just no turning back, because you're right. What for me allowed me to keep my foot on the gas and to take that leap was that I deeply believed, and I mean deeply, and I had to, this was all the way to my bone marrow, believed that what I was wanting, even though I didn't have it yet, I wasn't there, what I was aiming for, what I was prioritizing, what I had decided, this is the good and the right thing over here. This is free, this is true, this is beautiful, this is more fair, this is equitable. Everything that I wanted that was missing from the life I'd constructed was good. And that sustained me, because I just knew I am not taking a leap into a space that is plagued by inequality or or patriarchy. It's not going to require my silence to belong anymore, which is what it was for me at the time. I will have freedom over here. I don't know what it'll look like, but it'll at least be free and it'll at least be true. That was powerful motivation. I said this on another interview, but you know, for me, and this was a wide variety of things. It wasn't just one thing. It wasn't just one issue that I changed my mind on and thus everything changed. For me, it was a lot. It was a lot of stuff. But obviously what people largely know me for is that pivot into, you know, the affirming the LGBTQ community. And so I remember when all that was happening, and it was just crazy, and it was all burning and everything was on fire and everything was so screamy and loud and noisy and bananas. And my friend, who's just been passed away a year, Rachel Held Evans, who had been a absolute incredible mentor to me through the process. I basically asked her essentially what you asked me. Like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can stand in it. And she called me from an airport and it was all happening. And I was just like frozen. And she said, I'm going to tell you something right now that you may not be able to believe this. It's just because you haven't experienced it yet. And everything is so on fire, that's all you can feel and it's all you can see. But she said, trust me, you will get here. And this is this, doing the right thing is its own reward and it will be your own comfort. And she was like, it's enough. It will be enough. You will rebuild, Jen. She's like, you will. You don't even know. You don't even know about the community that you're going to have. They'll come. You'll find them and they'll find you. You will have a beautiful life on the other side of this. But I'm telling you, even before any of that before one brick is rebuilt, doing the right thing will comfort you and reward you. And she's right. And so if what you are reaching for, if you can be ballsy enough to believe that you can trust yourself, that what you want is beautiful and that what you want is good, and it's not just good for you, it's good for the community, it's good for the world, that's enough. If that's at the end of your road, that's a good road. You put your feet on that road and you walk it. And yes, some of that path will be very, very rocky. But I'm telling you, it will be its own reward and comfort. And on the other side of it, beauty, like absolute beauty and freedom and goodness. It's worth it. This is all worth it. The work is hard and it is all worth it. And I thank you for asking like such a good question, because you're not the only one weighing the cost right now. But I believe that you're strong enough for it. And I believe that you can handle it. And I really believe in what you are aiming for on the other side of it. It's going to be exciting for you. It's going to be beautiful for you and for everybody that you love. Everybody. What a good question. Thank you for looking so cute in my hat. It's really cute. Chrissy, we maybe have time for one more.
Absolutely.
Okay.
A really great question about community from Nikki Campo.
Yeah.
Nikki, go ahead and just wave your hands like nobody's watching, even though everybody is watching. Huh. Anybody see Nikki Campo? Nikki, you there? Oh, okay. She's got a cute little baby too. Oh.
Hey,
just on cue.
I was just sending you a note to say, withdraw my question. My baby's crying. Okay,
that's
so
okay. We can do crying babies.
I'm gonna ask it and try to keep her quiet.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jen, for doing this. You said in chapter 6, when we have a crew, they have an unbelievable effect on our wholeness, and I couldn't agree more. I'm curious, how important do you think it is that our crew be local? And I'm asking,
that's a great question.
Outside of quarantine, but what if we find our crew in sort of communities like this, and how much?
I love that question.
Go for it.
Hi, honey bunny. Hi. Are you in the Zoom with all the ladies?
I'll mute so you guys can hear.
Okay. That is fantastic. Isn't it an interesting time to be alive in the age of the internet? Because I am serious. You girls are living proof. It is possible to have and create and sustain sincere community with online friends. It is. I mean, there's a lot of ink spilled about that. Like, those aren't real relationships. And you know, people kind of have a trope about our relationships with one another online that I do not find to be fair at all. Some of my most cherished relationships are with online friends, and friends that I see primarily on my screens or on my Voxers. I think I talked about my Voxer friends to you guys in Fierce. It's real and it's beautiful. And especially some of us are located either geographically or in regions or just even in seasons of life that are just inherently lonely. Like, it's hard when you have some really big ideas that your community doesn't share, right? Or it's hard when some of your spiritual questions are not welcomed inside your faith community or inside your family. Some of you live remotely, you live in the country. Some of you are in like what I very affectionately like to call baby prison. And it's just a very hard time to get 10 spare minutes in a day, much less time to build like robust friendships. Some of you move a lot. Some of you have a either a job or a spouse job that sends you all over the place. So there's a lot of reasons for loneliness that are very valid and true. But I would like to suggest that true connection can happen like this. Now, do I love a friend on my porch and her bare feet over chips and salsa? Of course. And I still think that is a really valuable way to work on connection. And that doesn't mean we have to have 20 close friends. That can be one. One's enough. I'm telling you, one is enough. The data tells us, and I'm primarily speaking about friendships right now. I'm leaving our family and marriage relationships over here. They're kind of in a different category. I'm thinking about women in community together. The data tells us that one healthy relationship gives us all the same benefits as a crew, as you mentioned, that I mentioned in the book. So that's enough too. And if that's where you spend your time nurturing, that's fantastic. But to me, connection is wherever it lives. Connection is wherever it's real. Connection is wherever it's honest. Connection is wherever your vulnerability is not punished. Connection is wherever you love and are loved. If that is on the Facebook, then it is. If that is in a Voxer group with people in 6 different states, then it is. If that's in a private chat, that whatever, like wherever it lives, that's where it lives and it serves us well. And so I want to say this before we close, that I know that so many women are lonely because, as I mentioned earlier, chapter 6 in Fear, somebody was like, I felt that one right to my gut, like that one for the jugular. And so women, connections matter. I put the research in that chapter. They matter more than almost anything. And so if this is where you put your work, if you decide, I deserve this, like I deserve connection, I do, I deserve deep, abiding relationships in my life. If this is the place where you decide to put your energy, it's a good place. And there are so many of us here to connect with, for sure. We have built a beautiful community together online, and our book club has a gorgeous community with local chapters where you can see a human with a face, like a real flesh and blood skin on them too. And so let's keep working on this, girls, and let's keep talking about it. And let's keep raising our hands saying, I need more connection. Let's keep trying. Let's keep reaching for one another. Let's keep being vulnerable, even though that's scary, because that's the only way. Sorry, I wish there was a better path. I wish we could skirt around it, but it's through it. That's the only way to have real intimacy with one another. And so that requires bravery. And if you have to go first, then go first. If that's you that says, well, I'm going to have to like put this out there and see what returns to me, it's worth the risk. It is worth the risk. And so thank you for that incredible question and for your beautiful daughter. I'm so happy that you brought her on the Zoom call. Let's bring the daughters in as young as they are, you guys, as young as they are. Okay, Chrissy, is that it?
That is it.
Okay, everybody. I'm so happy to see your faces. I'm so happy to gather around these ideas together. I'm so thrilled about your questions. I'm so thrilled about your lives and the work that you're doing and the relationships that you are creating, the faith that you are examining, the questions you're asking. It just like freaks me out because it makes me so happy and proud. So proud of you. And so let's keep doing this work together. You know I will. Next week on Monday, we will be back together and we will discuss the third section, which is what I want. That's a fun one. I got a lot to say about that, you guys. I'm super fired up about that one. So until next week, sending you so much love here from the office and was delighted to have this Monday with you. Okay, or this Tuesday. See you next week, everybody. Bring your friends. We want to have them too. Next Monday, 3 o'clock Central. Bring them in with us. It's not too late. It's never too late. Bye, everybody.